My name's Jamie York, and I've been romantically involved with boring vanilla buy-to-let properties for the better part of a decade. I love them, and here's why. Reason number one, rental demand. Rental demand far outstrips supply. On average, we launched a letting agency around 15 months ago now, and our average property has 25 legitimate tenants per property on average. There's 25 people looking for that one property. And the reason I think that's great, bad for some people, but good for us investors, is if you invest in the right area, when there's that much demand for property, rental prices go up. When rental prices go up, people can afford to pay more as buy-to-let investors, and it pushes up property prices. If you're watching this channel and that makes you feel angry, it's probably not the channel for you. This is a property investment channel, right? But ultimately, my number one favorite thing is the demand outstrips supply pretty much across the board if you invest in the right area. Rental yields is number two, so kind of in line with rents, but the reason I really like property is the simplicity of yields. The way to think about yield is if I bought this cash and I got my rent over a year, what would that figure be as a percentage? It's the closest thing that's comparable to having money in your bank as an interest rate. So if you had 100 grand in your bank and you got 5% interest, then you would make £5,000. If you had £100,000 in a property and you made 5% yield, you would get £5,000. But the cool thing is that you can also leverage with property, which allows you to increase that yield, which I'll talk about in a second. But yield it's not about getting the highest yield possible. For example, I aim for around the 7% yield, which is a respectful amount of yield. It's not like the 12% yields that you can get. It's like if somebody told me I've got a 12% yield buy-to-let, I can near guarantee it's a shit property in a shit area. 7% yield in my areas in West and South Yorkshire dictates a really strong, realistic yield that's going to attract a great tenant that's going to make my house their home, and they're going to look after it for a long time. Number three, leverage. I love boring vanilla buy-to-let. Think about this logically, right? Pick your bank. Let me know who you bank with in the comments below. And imagine you're going into your bank, say Barclays. It's one of the banks that I bank with. I go to Barclays and go, hey, Barclays, I got a great idea. I would like you to loan me £75,000. They go, what's it for? Well, you give me 75 grand. I'll put in 25 grand, and I want to buy £100,000 worth of Barclays shares. What do you think their response can be? It's like, the fuck are you on about? You're batshit crazy. Jog on, mate. However, if I go to Barclays and I say, hey, I want 75 grand, I'll put in 25 grand to buy a buy-to-let property cash flowing. And they go, yeah, that sounds great. How many do you want to buy? Think about that like at a basic level, because it's kind of a bit jokey, but seriously, why is it a bank will give you 75% towards buying a property that they don't even own? You own the property, but they will loan 75% of it. They will put up 75% of the risk, but they wouldn't even do that with their own shares. Because one is fictional. It can be impacted by a newspaper release. It's just pieces of paper, whereas one is literally as safe as houses, with over 1,000 years of evidence, and it is absolutely instrumental to the fabric of our society. You're already a property investor. If you've got savings in the bank, how does the bank make money to pay you an interest? By investing. By what investing, I hear you ask? Well, great question. They loan it out to people. Really? What do they loan out the money for? Well, predominantly so people can buy properties. So they are able to loan out money on a leveraged basis based to fractional reserve banking, and they can make a shed ton of money by loaning out the money, and so can you. The thing is, they're willing to put in 75% of risk. You only put in 25%, but you have to be appropriate with your leverage. Top tip, not financial advice, do not over leverage. It's incredibly dangerous, so make sure you get advice from the experts. And on that note, by the way, if you have got 50k or more and you want to invest in boring vanilla buy-to-lets and start your love relationship, then comment APG in the comments below. That's what my business does. Number four is the security that it offers. As I mentioned, like obviously we want to grow through leverage, right? But actually it's the security, the fact that it's a need, not a want. And I think that's a bit like I guess you could argue somebody could live on the street and stuff like that. It's not really a need. I would argue it is a need. It's not quite food and water, but you need a roof over your head. You want a bed for your kids. You want somewhere that's warm, watertight, and everything else, right? And so because of that, what's the chances of buy-to-lets being non-existent? I was listening to Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon, on a podcast, a reel the other day. And he said, when people interview me, I always get asked, what do you think is going to be different in 10, 20 years time? And he says, and it's an okay question, but it's not the question to be asking. The correct question you should ask is, what's not going to change? It was like, because when you're building a business strategy, you can only build a strategy based on something that's not going to change. And so for Amazon, it's people will want things faster and faster and faster, and for something to be delivered safely. And I thought, wow, that's so true. And it's a really big reason I love boring vanilla buy-to-lets is service accommodation. I love it. It's great. Will it be here in 20 years? I would be shocked personally. HMOs in their current format, will they be here in 10 years? I doubt it, considering the amount of changes that have had to be made in the last 5 to 10 years. Will boring vanilla buy-to-lets be here in 20 years? I would stake my entire company that it is. Anyone wants to take me on that bet? Get in touch. But it will be here because we have that intrinsic need to have a home. And you can't regulate to a level where that stops. The reality is, actually, it's going to get harder and harder and harder for ownership. And so I genuinely think we have got a 10 to 20 year window to buy as many properties as we can because, as they said in The Who, it is you will own nothing and be happy with it. And the reality is that will be the case for most people. So I love the security over the long term because I don't want to make a strategic plan for the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years, and when my kids, grandkids and that inherit it, I want them to inherit a functional business that has longevity from day one. And finally, my favorite, the best still last, capital growth, because of supply and demand, where there's more demand than supply. Not in every area of the UK, by the way. It's really important to know that. You can't just go, oh, buy a property anywhere. No, if you buy a cheap property in a shit area, it's not going to go anywhere. If you buy a property in a small village with no real population growth, you're going to have problems. But if you buy in the right type of property, the right type of area where there's regeneration, there's growth going on, there's logistics, there's schools, there's investment, great tenant type, and great demand that outstrips supply, guess what happens? If more people want to buy something and the need is there, what do you think happens to your prices? They go up. And when leverage comes into this, let's say, for example, you've got a £100,000 property with 75% of it being a loan, you've only put in 25 grand. So if there's a 5% increase, which by the way, long-term capital growth is 7.9% per year on average in the UK, if you pick the great areas, it'll be higher. But let's say 5%, on a 100 grand property, that's £5,000 increase. But you only put in the 25k. There's fees as well, but just to keep it basic. So £5,000 on your £25,000 investment is a 20% return on your investment. That's without the rent or rental increases as well. So capital growth is the multiplier. It's your income on steroids. And it's an absolute beast that creates multimillionaires. So much so that our promise at Aspire Property Group is we will treble your initial investment in 10 years. And we are doing it consistently. Like I said, I've first started investing in 10 years. I tracked it for 50 years. And I'm constantly hitting those figures and metrics on target to do that. So we will treble your investment in the next 10 years. And if you want to be a part of that, comment APG and we will build your portfolio for you. You do need a minimum of £50,000 to invest. That's not with me, by the way. It's your property and goes towards the purchase of that property. APG in the comments below. If you're new to the channel and you got benefits from this video, you want to learn more about property investment, make sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell. And if you did get value, just tap that like button. Takes 2 seconds, really does mean the world to me and the team. And watch the next video.